My landlord asked, "Did you submit a change of address?" My ex had impersonated me. "Did you submit a change of address recently?" My landlord Marcus stood in my doorway at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday, holding a stack of mail that should have been in my apartment's lobby mailbox. His concerned expression made my stomach drop. "No, why would I started, then stopped as I saw my name printed clearly on each envelope. Student loan documents from the Department of Education. A certified letter from the graduate program I'd applied to transfer into. What looked like a job interview packet from the research lab downtown. Postal worker dropped these off personally," Marcus continued, shifting uncomfortably. "Said there was some kind of mix-up with your forwarding address. These were being sent to." He squinted at a yellow sticky note, 1247, Riverside Drive, apartment 3B. "You know anyone there?" The blood drained from my face. I knew that address by heart. I'd lived there for 8 months until 6 months ago, when I'd finally worked up the courage to leave Derek. "Can I see that paper?" My hands trembled as I took the forwarding notification. There it was, my full name, Rebecca Chan, with a request to forward all mail from my current address on Maple Street to Derek's apartment on Riverside Drive. The signature looked like mine, close enough that I could see how it might fool a postal worker who processed hundreds of these forms daily. But I sure as hell hadn't signed it. "Rebecca? You okay?" Marcus was studying my face with growing concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I felt like I had. For the past 3 months, I'd been wondering why everything seemed to be falling through the cracks. The graduate program I'd applied to had supposedly never received my supplemental essays I definitely submitted. The part-time research position that seemed like a sure thing had somehow given the job to someone else, claiming they'd tried to contact me for a second interview but never heard back. My student loan paperwork kept getting delayed because they were missing forms I could have sworn I'd already sent. I'd started to think I was losing my mind. The stress of graduate school, the isolation after the breakup, the way Derek had made me question my own memory during our relationship, it all seemed to be catching up with me. I'd even made an appointment with a counselor, convinced I was having some kind of breakdown that was making me forgetful and disorganized. But I wasn't crazy. Derek was still controlling my life from a distance. "I need to make some phone calls," I managed to tell Marcus, clutching the mail to my chest. Someone submitted this fraudulently. Someone who shouldn't have access to my information anymore." Marcus's expression darkened. He'd been my landlord for 2 years and had witnessed some of the tail end of my relationship with Derek, the surprise visits when I'd asked him not to come by, the way he'd somehow gotten a copy of my apartment key that I'd never given him, the fights that got loud enough for neighbors to complain. "That ex-boyfriend of yours?" When I nodded, Marcus shook his head grimly. "Rebecca, this is mail fraud. This is federal." I stared down at the stack of correspondence that represented months of missed opportunities, bureaucratic nightmares, and confusion that had made me doubt my own sanity. In Derek's mind, he probably justified this as keeping tabs on me for my own good, the same reasoning he'd used for checking my phone, monitoring my friendships, and isolating me from my support network. But now I had proof. After Marcus left, I spread the intercepted mail across my kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. The certified letter from Northwestern's graduate program was dated 3 weeks ago, a final notice asking me to confirm my acceptance of their research assistantship offer by October 15th, or they'd give the position to the next candidate. October 15th had been yesterday. I called the number on the letterhead with shaking fingers. "Graduate admissions, this is Patricia." "Hi, this is Rebecca Chan. I'm calling about the research assistantship for Dr. Morrison's lab. I just received your certified letter, but..." "Ms. Chan, I'm sorry, but that position was filled as of yesterday. We sent multiple notifications to your address on file, including express mail and certified delivery. When we didn't hear back, we assumed you weren't interested." "What address did you send them to?" I already knew the answer. 1247, Riverside Drive, apartment 3B. "That's the address on your forwarding request from August 12th. August 12th. 2 weeks after I'd blocked Derek's number, changed my social media passwords, and told him never to contact me again. He'd submitted the forwarding request the same day I'd started my current job at the campus library, a job I'd specifically not told him about because I'd been trying to create a clean break. After hanging up with Northwestern, I opened my laptop and started making a spreadsheet. If I was going to build a case, I needed documentation. Column A, date. Column B, missed opportunity or communication. Column C, estimated impact. The research position at Northwestern, $48,000 annual stipend plus tuition waiver. Lost. The job interview at Meridian Labs, they'd sent an interview packet to confirm my time slot, never got my response, assumed I was a no-show. I called them back in September thinking they'd ghosted me, but they said they'd never heard from me after the initial phone screening. The position paid $52,000. Also lost. My student loan renewal forms, 6 weeks late, which meant I'd been charged a $150 processing fee and nearly lost my financial aid status entirely. Only my frantic phone calls last month had kept me enrolled. The graduate program transfer application, missing supplemental materials that I'd mailed in July, addressed to my current apartment but somehow never received by the admissions committee. Application deadline missed. By noon, I'd documented $100,000 plus in lost opportunities and direct financial impact. My hands were steady now, focused by anger instead of shaken by shock. I called the Postal Service fraud hotline. "This is Inspector Williams. How can I help you?" "I need to report mail fraud. Someone has been impersonating me to redirect my mail without my consent." I kept my voice level, professional. "Ma'am, I need to ask, is this a domestic situation?" "My ex-boyfriend. But I have documentation, and I can prove the financial impact has been significant." Inspector Williams took down my information and scheduled an appointment for Thursday morning. "In the meantime, Ms. Chen, don't confront this individual directly. Mail fraud is a federal offense, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and substantial fines. If he's monitoring your mail, there's a good chance he's escalating other controlling behaviors. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay?" After hanging up, I sat staring at my spreadsheet. Derek thought he was still pulling my strings, probably enjoying the chaos he was creating in my life from a distance. He'd always loved being the person who rescued me from problems, especially problems he'd created himself. But he'd made one crucial mistake: he'd left a paper trail. and he had no idea I'd found it. I opened a new browser tab and started researching everything I could find about mail fraud prosecutions. If Derek wanted to play games with my future, I was going to make sure he faced the consequences. 3 hours into my research on mail fraud prosecutions, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'd gotten paranoid about unexpected calls lately, but something made me pick up. Rebecca? It's Sarah from DR. Martinez's office at the University Counseling Center. I'm calling because you missed your appointment this morning at 10 a.m., and we wanted to make sure you're okay. I stared at my calendar. The appointment was clearly marked for Thursday at 10 a.m., 2 days from now. I'm sorry, but my appointment is scheduled for Thursday, October 17th. No, I'm showing Tuesday, October 15th at 10 a.m. You called last week to move it up because you said you had a family emergency on Thursday. My blood turned to ice water. Sarah, I never called to reschedule anything. A long pause. Someone called claiming to be you. They knew your student ID number and your original appointment time. They said your grandmother had been hospitalized and you needed to move the session to today instead. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar sensation of my reality tilting sideways. Can you tell me exactly what number they called from? Let me check. It shows as a blocked number, but they confirmed your personal details. Your birth date, your graduate program, even mentioned that you were coming in to discuss anxiety related to a recent breakup. Derek. He'd been in the room when I'd made that initial appointment 6 weeks ago, back when I'd still been doubting myself, thinking maybe I really was becoming forgetful and disorganized. I'd called on speaker while cooking dinner, and he'd listened to the entire conversation about my stress-related memory issues. After hanging up with Sarah, I immediately called Northwestern back. Patricia, this is Rebecca Chin again. I have a strange question. Did anyone else call about my assistantship application? Maybe claiming to be calling on my behalf? Actually, yes. We received a call about 2 weeks ago from someone who said they were your academic advisor. They asked us to extend your response deadline because you were dealing with a family medical emergency. That's why we sent the final certified notice. We'd already given you an extra week. What did this person say exactly? They claimed you were out of state caring for a sick relative and might not be checking mail regularly. They provided your student ID and new details about your application that seemed legitimate. But Ms. Chen, if that wasn't authorized. I hung up and immediately called Meridian Labs. Same story. Someone had called claiming to be my graduate advisor, saying I was dealing with a family crisis but was still very interested in the position. They'd rescheduled my interview twice based on these calls before finally giving up. Derek wasn't just stealing my mail. He was actively sabotaging my life while positioning himself as a helpful intermediary. In his twisted logic, he was probably creating problems so he could swoop in later to help me solve them. It was his favorite manipulation tactic: manufacture a crisis, then be the hero who fixed it, making me dependent on him and grateful for his intervention. I opened a new document and started recording every detail of these phone calls. Times, dates, what personal information the caller had provided. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was pure rage. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey Becca, heard you've been having a rough few months. Coffee sometime? I'm here if you need to talk. D. The casual tone made me want to scream. Derek was reaching out like a concerned friend, probably timing it perfectly for when his manufactured chaos had reached peak impact. He wanted me confused, isolated, and desperate enough to turn to him for support. I stared at the message for a full minute, then screenshot it and added it to my evidence folder. 2 could play this game. But only one of us was going to prison. I screenshot Derek's text and forced myself to wait 3 hours before responding. If he was monitoring my patterns, and given everything else, he probably was, I needed to seem like the confused, overwhelmed Rebecca he expected. Things have been really hard lately, I finally typed back. Feel like I'm losing my mind. Maybe coffee would help. His response came back in under 2 minutes. Tomorrow 3 p.m.? That little place on 5th Street where we used to go? I've been worried about you. Of course he'd been worried. Hard to monitor the effectiveness of psychological warfare without regular check-ins. I agreed to meet him, then immediately called Inspector Williams back. I need to move up our appointment. He's making contact. Ms. Chan, I strongly advise against meeting with him until we've filed the initial report. What if he doesn't know that I know? This could be an opportunity to get him to admit what he's been doing. A long pause. Are you familiar with single-party consent recording laws in your state? I wasn't, but I learned quickly. 1 hour of research later, I downloaded a recording app and practiced using it until I could start and stop it without looking at my phone. That evening, I called my sister Jenny in Portland. I hadn't spoken to her in 2 months, another relationship that had suffered during my spiral into self-doubt and isolation. Becca. God, I was starting to worry. You've been so hard to reach lately. I know, I'm sorry. Listen, I need to tell you something, but I need you to promise not to call me or text me about it until Friday, okay? And don't post anything on social media about talking to me. I explained everything. The mail fraud, the phone calls, the missed opportunities. Jenny's silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. That psychotic piece of shit, she finally whispered. Becca, I'm getting in my car right now. I can be there by. No. I need to handle this the right way. Legal way. But I needed someone to know, in case. I trailed off. In case what? In case he's more dangerous than I think he is. Jenny made me promise to text her a code word every day until this was over. Pineapple, she decided. Text me pineapple every morning so I know you're okay. Wednesday morning, I dressed carefully for my coffee date with Derek. Nothing too nice, he'd always been suspicious when I dressed up without him, but nothing that looked like I'd completely given up either. I needed to seem like someone who was struggling but still functioning. Someone who might be grateful for his guidance. I arrived at Grounded Coffee 15 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner where I could record without other conversations interfering. My heart was hammering as I tested the app one more time. Derek walked in at exactly 3 p.m., and my chest tightened at the sight of him. 6 months hadn't changed much, same perfectly styled dark hair, same confident stride, same way of scanning a room like he owned it. He spotted me immediately and his face arranged itself into an expression of loving concern. Becca. He slid into the chair across from me and reached for my hands. You look tired. I let him take my hands, fighting every instinct to pull away. I've been having the weirdest few months. I feel like I'm losing track of everything. His thumb rubbed across my knuckles in what used to be a comforting gesture. Now it felt like a spider walking across my skin. Tell me what's been going on. You know I'm always here for you. I launched into a carefully crafted story about missed opportunities and bureaucratic nightmares, watching his face for any tells. He nodded sympathetically, asked all the right questions, and slowly began offering solutions. You know, I still have some connections at Northwestern from my undergraduate research, he said casually. I could make a few calls, see if there's anything still available. My recording app captured every word as Derek positioned himself as my savior, never once admitting he'd created the problems he was offering to solve. But I wasn't the same person who'd left his apartment 6 months ago. And I was about to prove it. 20 minutes into our coffee meeting, Derek made his first real mistake. You know what might help? He leaned forward with that earnest expression I used to find so reassuring. I could temporarily forward your mail to my place again, just until you get back on your feet. That way I could sort through everything, make sure nothing important slips through the cracks. My blood pressure spiked, but I kept my voice steady. Forward my mail? How would you even do that? Oh, it's easy. Just a simple form at the post office. I helped you with it once before, remember? When you were stressed about finals and kept forgetting to check your mailbox? I had never asked him to forward my mail. Ever. But here he was, casually admitting he knew exactly how the process worked while pretending it was my idea originally. I don't remember that, I said carefully. Derek's smile flickered for just a second. You were pretty overwhelmed at the time. Senior year was rough for you, you were forgetting lots of things. I had to step in and handle quite a bit of your paperwork that semester. More revisionist history. Senior year was when Derek had started helping me with everything, paying my bills because I was too scattered, managing my schedule because I was too disorganized, even picking up my prescriptions because I always forgot. I thought I was lucky to have such an attentive boyfriend. Now I could see it was a systematic campaign to make me dependent on him. Derek, I said, making my voice smaller, more vulnerable, I've been missing so much mail lately. Important stuff. It's like it's just disappearing. His eyes lit up with what looked like genuine excitement. Really? Like what? I told him about Northwestern, about the student loans, about the job interviews. With each missed opportunity one described, he became more animated, more engaged. He was enjoying this. God, Becca, that's terrible. You must feel so helpless. He squeezed my hands tighter. But hey, I might actually be able to help with some of this. I've been keeping an eye on you, you know? Making sure you're okay. My mouth went dry. What do you mean, keeping an eye on me? Just checking in with mutual friends, that kind of thing. And actually. He paused, like he was debating whether to tell me something. I might have some of your mail at my place. The recording app was capturing every word, but I still couldn't believe he was actually admitting this. My mail? How would you have my mail? Remember Dr. Patterson from your psych program? He mentioned he'd been trying to reach you about some paperwork, couldn't get through. So I told him I could pass along any documents, save him the hassle of tracking you down. Dr. Patterson. My thesis advisor, who'd been copied on my transfer application to Northwestern. I'd wondered why he'd never followed up about my decision. You told him to send my mail to your address? I kept my voice bewildered rather than angry. Just temporarily. I was going to bring it all to you once you were feeling more stable. I have a whole stack of stuff, university documents, what looks like job-related things. I've been waiting for the right time to give it to you. Derek was building his hero narrative in real time. He'd stolen my mail and sabotaged my opportunities, but in his version of events, he was the thoughtful ex-boyfriend protecting my important documents until I was mentally capable of handling them. Can I get that mail back? I asked. Of course. How about I bring it by your apartment tomorrow evening? We could order pizza, go through everything together. Some of it looks pretty complicated, you might want help figuring out response deadlines and stuff. I nodded eagerly, like this sounded wonderful instead of like my worst nightmare. That would be amazing. I've been so lost without. I let the sentence hang, and Derek finished it exactly how I expected, without someone to take care of the details. I know, babe. That's always been hard for you. It had never been hard for me. But Derek had spent 2 years convincing me it was, and apparently still believed his own lies. Tomorrow at 7, he said, already standing up. I'll bring everything. We'll get your life sorted out. After he left, I sat in the coffee shop for another 20 minutes, listening to the recording and taking notes. Derek had just confessed to mail theft, impersonation, and interference with my academic and professional communications. He'd also volunteered to bring evidence directly to my apartment. I texted Inspector Williams, meeting moved up. He's delivering evidence tomorrow night. Then I texted my sister, Pineapple. Also, call me in exactly 1 hour. This was really happening. Inspector Williams called me back within an hour. Ms. Chen, absolutely do not meet with him alone at your apartment. This level of calculated deception suggests someone who's escalating, not winding down. But he's bringing the evidence directly to me. Isn't that what we need? We need you alive to testify. I'm coordinating with local police for tomorrow evening. We'll have officers positioned outside your building, but I want you to have backup inside too. I called Marcus first. When I explained the situation, he didn't hesitate. I'll be in the maintenance room next to your unit. Door stays unlocked, and I'll have my phone ready to call 911. Then I called Jenny back. Change of plans. I need you here by tomorrow afternoon. Already packed. I'll drive through the night. That evening, I started going through my evidence folder one more time when my phone buzzed with another text from Derek, looking forward to tomorrow. Found even more of your mail. You're going to be so relieved when you see how much I've been protecting for you, Red Heart. The heart emoji made my skin crawl. He genuinely believed he was doing something loving. I screenshot the message and noticed something I'd missed before. The timestamp on his texts were always exactly on the hour or half hour. 3 p.m., 7:30 p.m., 9 p.m. Derek had always been particular about punctuality, but this was different. This was scheduled. On impulse, I scrolled back through months of the weird anxiety I'd been feeling. The sense that someone was watching me, the paranoid feeling that my routine was being monitored. I'd attributed it to post-breakup stress, but now I started mapping the timeline differently. I called my campus library supervisor, Monica. This is going to sound strange, but has anyone been asking about my work schedule? Actually, yes. About 3 weeks ago, someone called claiming to be from the registrar's office, verifying student employee hours for some kind of audit. They asked specifically about your shifts. My hands went cold. What did they want to know? Your regular schedule, when you take breaks, which days you work late. I gave them your standard Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday pattern. Why? I looked at my calendar. Every time I'd felt that creepy sensation of being watched had been on a Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. The days Derek now knew I'd be on campus. Monica, if anyone calls asking about me again, don't give out any information. And maybe don't schedule me for regular patterns for a while. After hanging up, I walked to my apartment window and looked out at the parking lot. A dark blue Honda Civic was parked in the visitor space, the same car that had been there Tuesday evening when I'd gotten home from campus. And last Saturday when I'd returned from the library. Derek's car. My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number again. Rebecca? This is Dr. Patterson from the psychology department. I apologize for the confusion, but I need to clarify something about your transfer application materials. My thesis advisor. The one Derek claimed had been sending my mail to his address. I received a very strange call today from someone claiming to be your current boyfriend. He said you'd asked him to call me about withdrawing your transfer application entirely. But Rebecca, I never sent any documents to anyone except you, directly, at your registered address. The room spun slightly. What exactly did this person say? He claimed you decided graduate school was too stressful and you wanted to withdraw from all your applications. He offered to handle the paperwork to save you the emotional difficulty. When I pressed him for details, he hung up. Derek wasn't just stealing my opportunities anymore. He was actively trying to destroy them, making decisions about my future while pretending to act on my behalf. And he was getting bolder. I looked out the window again. The Honda was gone. But now I knew he was escalating beyond mail fraud. Tomorrow night wasn't just about recovering stolen documents. It was about stopping someone who thought he had the right to control my entire life. I double-checked my door locks and started counting the hours until Jenny arrived. Thursday morning, Jenny arrived looking like she was ready for war. My older sister had always been protective, but seeing her march up to my apartment door with a duffel bag and a face like thunder reminded me why our high school bullies had learned to leave me alone. Show me everything, she said without preamble, dropping her bag and pulling out a laptop. I spread the evidence across my kitchen table while Jenny documented it with her phone. As a paralegal, she knew how to organize information that would hold up in court, and watching her work gave me the first real confidence I'd felt in months. This is federal, she said after reviewing the postal fraud documentation. But Becca, this phone impersonation stuff? That's identity theft too. And depending on how long he's been surveilling your routine. She looked up from her notes. This could be stalking charges. At 2 p.m., Inspector Williams arrived with Officer Martinez from local police. They transformed my living room into a command center, testing my recording equipment and positioning backup devices around the apartment. Ms. Chen, I need to be clear about the risks here, Inspector Williams said. Mail fraud typically carries a 5-year maximum sentence, but when it's combined with stalking and identity theft in a domestic violence context, we're looking at potentially much more serious charges. People facing that kind of time sometimes make desperate decisions. Jenny squeezed my hand. We can call this off. Press charges with what we already have. I shook my head. He's got months of my mail at his apartment. Documents I need for my transfer applications, financial aid forms, job correspondence. If we don't get it back, he's already won. Officer Martinez positioned herself in Marcus's maintenance room with a clear view of my front door. Inspector Williams would be monitoring from an unmarked car in the parking lot. Jenny insisted on staying in my bedroom with the door cracked open, despite everyone's protests that civilians shouldn't be involved. That psycho dated my sister for 2 years, she said flatly. I've been waiting for a chance to meet him properly. At 6:30 p.m., Derek texted, running a few minutes late. Traffic is crazy. They're at 7:15 Red Heart. At exactly 7:15, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Derek holding a large manila envelope and wearing the smile that used to make me feel safe. Now it looked predatory. Hey beautiful. God, I've missed seeing you. He kissed my cheek before I could pull away, then walked into my apartment like he still belonged there. I caught a whiff of his cologne, the same expensive stuff he'd always worn, the scent that used to cling to my clothes and hair. Now it made my stomach turn. So I brought everything, he said, settling onto my couch and patting the cushion beside him. But Becca, when I was organizing it all, I started thinking maybe we should talk about getting you some help. Professional help. My blood chilled. What kind of help? Derek's voice took on that patient, condescending tone I remembered too well. You've been making some pretty erratic decisions lately. Missing important deadlines, forgetting appointments. Dr. Patterson told me you've been seeming confused and disoriented. Dr. Patterson never said that. He did when I called him today. Derek opened the envelope and pulled out a thick stack of mail, my mail, with my name and address clearly visible on every piece. He's concerned about your mental state. We both are. I stared at the documents he was casually holding hostage. Months of my life, my opportunities, my future, sorted into neat piles like he was doing me a favor. In fact, Derek continued, I've been thinking about having you committed. Just temporarily, until you're stable enough to handle your responsibilities again. The recording app was capturing every word, but the casual way he discussed having me involuntarily committed made my hands shake. This wasn't just about mail fraud anymore. This was about a man who genuinely believed he owned me. The word committed hung in the air like a threat. I forced myself to stay seated, even though every instinct screamed at me to run. Committed? I kept my voice level, but my heart was hammering. Derek, that's pretty extreme. Is it though? He leaned forward, his expression shifting into what I now recognized as his manipulation mode, eyebrows slightly raised, head tilted, voice dropping to that reasonable tone he used when he wanted to sound like a rational one. Think about it, Becca. You've missed major deadlines, you're forgetting appointments, you can't keep track of important documents. These aren't normal mistakes. He gestured to the stack of my mail like it was evidence of my incompetence rather than proof of his crimes. I've been documenting everything. The missed calls from Northwestern, the job interviews you supposedly forgot about, the student loan paperwork you couldn't handle. Any psychiatrist would see a clear pattern of declining mental capacity. My mouth went dry. You've been documenting my life? Someone had to. Derek pulled out his phone and started scrolling. Look, here's a photo I took of that student loan notice that was about to expire. And here's a recording of you crying on the phone to your sister about feeling like you were losing your mind. I've been keeping track because I knew eventually you'd need someone to advocate for you. He had recordings of my private phone calls. My stomach lurched as I realized how deep this surveillance went. The weird echo I'd noticed sometimes during calls with Jenny, the way my phone battery seemed to drain faster lately, he'd been actively monitoring my communications. Derek, this is necessary, he interrupted smoothly. Becca, you called me Tuesday night at 11:47 p.m., crying about how you couldn't trust your own memory anymore. Do you even remember that? I definitely hadn't called him Tuesday night. But Derek was pulling up what looked like a call log on his phone, showing my number and a timestamp. Somehow he was manufacturing evidence of conversations that had never happened. I don't remember calling you, I said carefully. See? This is exactly what I mean. Derek's voice was getting more animated, more excited. You're having memory gaps, paranoid thoughts, difficulty managing basic adult responsibilities. I've been researching facilities that specialize in stress-related psychological breaks. There's a really good private hospital about 2 hours north, Riverside Behavioral Health. They have an excellent program for young professionals who've had mental health crises. He said it like he was planning a vacation, not discussing having me involuntarily imprisoned. And the casual way he mentioned Riverside made me realize this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment threat. He'd been researching psychiatric facilities. Planning this. The intake process is pretty straightforward, Derek continued, pulling a folded paper from his jacket pocket. I already downloaded the preliminary forms. As someone who's known you intimately and witnessed your decline firsthand, my testimony would carry significant weight with the evaluation team. My hands were shaking now, but I managed to keep my voice steady. You can't just have someone committed, Derek. That's not how it works. Actually, it is exactly how it works. His smile was patient, condescending. In cases where someone poses a danger to themselves through neglect or inability to care for their basic needs, concerned family members or intimate partners can petition for emergency psychiatric evaluation. The documentation I've been keeping, missed deadlines, forgotten responsibilities, erratic behavior, it paints a pretty clear picture. He leaned back, looking satisfied. But here's the good news, babe. It doesn't have to go that far. If you let me help you get your life back on track, if we work together to manage your responsibilities like we used to, then there's no need for outside intervention. I stared at him, finally understanding the full scope of his plan. Derek hadn't just been stealing my mail and sabotaging my opportunities. He'd been systematically creating evidence of my supposed mental incompetence while positioning himself as my only salvation. Every missed deadline, every bureaucratic nightmare, every moment of confusion and self-doubt, it was all building toward this moment where he could present himself as either my savior or my warden. So what do you say? Derek reached for my hands again. Ready to let me take care of you properly this time? From my bedroom, I heard the faintest creak of a floorboard. Jenny, reminding me I wasn't alone. I looked down at the stack of stolen mail, then back up at Derek's expectant face. Actually, I said, I think we should call the police. Derek's face went through a fascinating series of micro-expressions, confusion, then annoyance, then something that looked almost like amusement. Call the police? He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Becca, what would you even tell them? That your ex-boyfriend has been worried about your mental health? I'd tell them about the mail fraud, for starters. I kept my voice calm, watching his reaction carefully. Federal crime, Derek. 5 years minimum. His laugh became more strained. What mail fraud? You mean me helping collect documents that were getting lost because you couldn't manage your own address changes properly? He gestured at the stack between us. I have records showing you asked me to help coordinate your mail forwarding. Remember? Back in August when you were having those anxiety attacks? I'd never had anxiety attacks in August. But Derek was pulling out his phone again, scrolling to what looked like text message screenshots. Here. August 14th, 2:30 a.m. You texted me saying you were overwhelmed and needed help managing your correspondence. He turned his phone toward me, and I saw what looked like a conversation thread between us. Messages from my number, begging him to help handle my mail because I was too scattered to deal with bureaucracy. Timestamps, phone numbers, even the typing patterns looked authentic. I never sent those texts, I said. Becca. Derek's voice was getting that sharp edge I remembered from our worst fights. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Memory gaps. Paranoid delusions. You're sitting here accusing me of committing federal crimes when I have documentation proving you specifically asked for my help. He was good. Really good. For a split second, staring at those fabricated text messages, I almost doubted myself. The screenshots looked completely real, and Derek's injured confusion seemed so genuine. But then he made a mistake. Besides, he continued, even if you did call the police, what evidence would they find? Some mail forwarding forms with your signature, some text messages asking for help, some concerned phone calls from your loving ex-boyfriend who's been trying to support you through a mental health crisis. He shrugged. Worst case scenario, it looks like a miscommunication. Best case, it demonstrates a clear pattern of erratic behavior that supports the psychiatric evaluation I've been recommending. Derek leaned forward, his mask slipping just enough for me to see the calculation behind it. You want to know what the police would actually find if they searched my apartment? Months of careful documentation about your declining mental state. Photos of concerning text messages you've sent. Audio recordings of you having breakdowns. A detailed timeline of missed responsibilities and forgotten commitments. My blood turned to ice. You've been recording me without consent for months? I've been documenting concerning behavior from someone I care about, he corrected smoothly. And in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording conversations. I always consented to recording our calls. The casual way he said it, like surveillance was just another form of caring, made me want to scream. But Derek wasn't finished. So here's what's going to happen, he said, his voice dropping to that controlled tone I remembered from when he was really angry. You're going to thank me for organizing your mail, we're going to work together to get your life back on track, and you're going to stop having paranoid episodes about imaginary crimes. He stood up, towering over me on the couch. Or I'm going to make some phone calls tonight. Dr. Patterson is already concerned about your mental state. Your sister mentioned to mutual friends that she's worried about you. Your landlord has witnessed you having erratic conversations in the hallway. My chest tightened. Marcus never said that. Marcus will say whatever needs to be said when someone explains how concerned we all are about your well-being, Derek replied coldly. Emergency psychiatric holds don't require much evidence, Becca. Just two people willing to testify that you're a danger to yourself. From somewhere in the building, I heard the faint sound of a door closing. Derek heard it too, his head turning slightly toward the noise. Expecting company? He asked, and for the first time tonight, he sounded genuinely suspicious. Just neighbors, I said, but Derek was already moving toward the window, his predatory instincts kicking in. Funny. Looks like an unmarked police car in the visitor parking. He turned back to me, and his expression had shifted completely. Gone was the concerned ex-boyfriend persona, what I saw now was cold, calculating anger. Rebecca, what exactly have you done? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Derek lunged for it, but I was faster, snatching it away from him. The text was from Inspector Williams, in position. Keep him talking. Derek saw me reading and his face went white. You stupid, paranoid bitch. You actually called the police? Federal postal inspectors, I corrected, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. And yes, they've been listening to everything you just said about having me committed with fabricated evidence. His hands clenched into fists. You have no idea what you've just done to yourself. Those recordings I mentioned? They're automatically uploaded to cloud storage. If something happens to me, if I get arrested, they get released to every graduate program you've applied to, every potential employer, everyone in your academic network. My stomach dropped. Released how? Scheduled emails. Set to send if I don't check in every 24 hours. Derek's smile was vicious now. Audio files of you having complete breakdowns, claiming people are watching you, sobbing about how you can't trust your own mind. Think Northwestern's going to want a graduate student who sounds clinically paranoid? Think any research lab will hire someone who rambles about conspiracy theories? He pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the screen. But I'm feeling generous. Text Inspector Williams right now. Tell him this was all a misunderstanding, that you were having a psychological episode and made up stories about mail fraud. Do it right now, and maybe your academic career survives this. From the maintenance room, I heard a door handle turn. Derek heard it too. Derek Matthews, Officer Martinez's voice came from my doorway, her weapon drawn. Step away from Ms. Chen and put your hands where I can see them. Derek spun around, his phone still in his hand. Officer, thank God you're here. My ex-girlfriend is having a psychiatric emergency. She's been making paranoid accusations, and I'm worried she might hurt herself. Sir, put the phone down and step back. She called you claiming I committed mail fraud, didn't she? Derek's voice shifted back to that reasonable, concerned tone. I have documentation proving she asked me to help manage her correspondence. She's been having severe memory issues and... Mr. Matthews. Inspector Williams appeared behind Officer Martinez, holding up a tablet. We've been listening to this entire conversation, including your detailed confession to mail fraud, surveillance, and conspiracy to file false psychiatric reports. Derek's face cycled through several emotions before settling on rage. You can't use that recording. She didn't have my consent. Actually, we can, Inspector Williams replied calmly. Federal agents conducting an investigation don't need your consent to record criminal confessions. And threatening to release fabricated mental health recordings unless someone withdraws a criminal complaint? That's extortion. Those recordings aren't fabricated. The ones created using voice synthesis software? We'll let digital forensics determine their authenticity. Inspector Williams stepped into my apartment, and I saw Derek's confidence finally crack. Derek Matthews, you're under arrest for mail fraud, identity theft, stalking, and extortion. Derek's eyes found mine across the room. This isn't over, Rebecca. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea how deep this goes. Every connection you have, every reference, every person in your academic circle, I know all of them. And they know me. Officer Martinez moved toward him with handcuffs. Sir, you have the right to remain silent. Riverside Drive Apartment 3B, Derek continued, talking directly to me even as his hands were being cuffed behind his back. Check the lease, Rebecca. Check who's been paying the rent since you moved out. My blood turned to ice. The lease I'd signed, the deposit I'd paid, the utilities in my name, they'd never been switched over after I left. If Derek had been paying my portion of the rent for 6 months, if he'd maintained that address as some kind of legal residence. The mail forwarding was completely legal, Derek said as Officer Martinez guided him toward the door. You can't forward mail from an address you don't have legal standing at. But apartment 3B? That's been our address this whole time. Jenny appeared from my bedroom, her face pale. Becca, what's he talking about? Inspector Williams was already on his phone. I need a warrant for 1247, Riverside Drive, apartment 3B. And I need someone to pull lease records going back 6 months. As Derek disappeared down the hallway in handcuffs, his final words echoed in my apartment, see you in court, roommate. The next morning, I sat in Inspector Williams' office staring at documents that made my stomach churn. Derek had been telling the truth about one thing, he'd been paying rent on apartment 3B for the past 6 months. Not just my portion, but the entire lease after his previous roommate moved out in September. Legally speaking, this complicates things, Inspector Williams admitted, sliding a copy of the lease amendment across his desk. If Mr. Matthews has been the primary leaseholder since September 1st, and if your name was never formally removed from the original lease, then technically, Then technically I still live there, I finished, feeling sick. And mail forwarding between your own addresses isn't fraud. It's still identity theft for the phone calls impersonating you, and stalking for the surveillance, Officer Martinez added quickly. But the mail charges might not stick without additional evidence. Jenny leaned forward in her chair. What about all the opportunities Becca lost? The job interviews, the graduate program? Civil damages, potentially. But not federal crimes if the mail forwarding was technically legal. I stared at Derek's signature on the lease amendment, dated August 15th, 3 days after I blocked his number and told him never to contact me again. While I was trying to build a new life, he'd been cementing his legal claim to our old address, ensuring he could intercept my mail without technically breaking the law. He's been planning this for months, I said quietly. Every move was calculated. Inspector Williams nodded grimly. The good news is, we executed a search warrant on the apartment this morning. What we found goes well beyond mail forwarding. He opened a thick folder and spread photos across his desk. My breath caught. The images showed Derek's bedroom wall covered with printed screenshots of my social media posts, my work schedule from the campus library, maps with my daily routes highlighted in red marker. There was a detailed timeline of my activities stretching back 6 months, with notes in Derek's handwriting about my emotional state and concerning behaviors. This is a stalker's shrine, Officer Martinez said. And this. She handed me another photo. This was in his desk drawer. The image showed a folder labeled Rebecca, Psychiatric Documentation. Inside were the fabricated text message screenshots Derek had shown me, printed therapy intake forms with my forged signature, and what looked like a draft petition for emergency psychiatric evaluation. My name, my personal details, all filled out in Derek's neat handwriting. He was actually going to try to have me committed, I whispered. The psychiatrist whose name appears on these forms has never heard of you, Inspector Williams confirmed. Dr. Sarah Kim at Riverside Behavioral Health says someone called her office 3 weeks ago asking detailed questions about their intake process, claiming to be researching facilities for a family member. The caller knew enough medical terminology to sound legitimate. Jenny grabbed my hand. Becca, this is beyond obsession. This is systematic psychological warfare. I flipped through more photos from Derek's apartment. Screenshots of my banking information, somehow he'd been monitoring my account activity. Printed emails that had been sent to my academic references, all supposedly from me, asking them to hold off on any recommendations until my mental health stabilizes. A detailed floor plan of my current apartment building with security camera blind spots marked in yellow highlighter. How long has he been inside my apartment? I asked, my voice barely audible. Inspector Williams exchanged a glance with Officer Martinez. We found copies of your current keys in his possession. Building master, apartment deadbolt, even your mailbox key. The room spun slightly. Every time I'd felt watched, every moment of paranoia, every sensation that someone had been in my space, I hadn't been losing my mind. Derek had been systematically invading every aspect of my life while simultaneously building a legal framework to have me declared mentally incompetent. There's more, Inspector Williams continued. We found evidence that he's been doing this to at least 2 other ex-girlfriends. Similar documentation folders, similar mail forwarding schemes. We're reaching out to those women now. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Amanda Chen, no relation, but Inspector Williams gave me your contact. Derek did this to me too. Can we talk? I looked up at Inspector Williams. How many victims are there? We're still investigating, but Rebecca, what you did, gathering evidence, getting him on record, forcing him to reveal the scope of his operation, you may have just saved multiple women from years of psychological torture. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Derek hadn't just been stealing my mail. He'd been stealing my reality, my sense of safety, my trust in my own perceptions. But now, surrounded by evidence of his elaborate deception, I finally had proof that I wasn't crazy. I was just the victim who'd been smart enough to fight back. 2 days after Derek's arrest, I was finally starting to feel safe again when Amanda Chen called me back with news that made my blood run cold. Rebecca, I need to tell you something about Derek's pattern. Amanda's voice was tight with anxiety. After he was arrested for stalking me 2 years ago, he didn't stop. He got smarter. I was sitting in Jenny's rental car outside the courthouse, having just finished giving my statement to the prosecutor. What do you mean, smarter? The psychiatric commitment thing? He actually succeeded with his girlfriend before me. A woman named Lisa Park. Derek had her involuntarily committed for 72 hours in 2019 using fabricated evidence of mental instability. By the time she got out and could prove the documentation was falsified, he'd cleaned out her apartment and destroyed her academic records. My hand started shaking. Where is Lisa now? That's the problem. I can't find her. She completely disappeared after the commitment, dropped out of her graduate program, moved out of state, changed her phone number. Derek effectively erased her from her own life. I closed my eyes, remembering Derek's casual confidence when he described the commitment process, the way he'd already researched Riverside Behavioral Health, how he'd printed intake forms with my information. This wasn't his first time. Amanda, did Lisa ever get justice? Was Derek prosecuted? The charges were dropped. Lisa was so traumatized she refused to testify, and without her cooperation, the DA couldn't prove the psychiatric records were forged. Derek walked away clean. Jenny looked over at me with concern as I finished the call. Bad news? Derek has done this before. Successfully. I explained about Lisa Park, about the pattern of escalation, about how Derek had been perfecting his psychological warfare techniques for years. My phone rang immediately. Inspector Williams. Rebecca, we have a problem. Derek made bail 2 hours ago. The world tilted sideways. How is that possible? You said the charges were serious. They are, but his lawyer argued that Derek has no prior convictions, stable employment, and community ties. The judge set bail at $50,000. Apparently Derek's parents put up their house as collateral. I looked around the courthouse parking lot frantically, suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable. What about the restraining order? In place, but Rebecca, I need you to understand something. Derek's lawyer is claiming that all the evidence we found in his apartment was part of a legitimate mental health intervention. They're arguing he was genuinely concerned about your psychological state and was documenting evidence to help get you treatment. That's insane. It's also a surprisingly effective legal strategy. Derek's positioned himself as a concerned ex-boyfriend who was trying to help, and you as the unstable ex-girlfriend making vindictive accusations. His lawyer has already filed countercharges claiming you falsely reported federal crimes. Jenny grabbed the phone from me. This is Rebecca's sister. Are you telling me this psychopath is free? Ma'am, Derek Matthews is required to stay at least 500 feet away from your sister, but yes, he's been released pending trial. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. Derek wasn't just free, he was actively fighting back, using the same manipulation tactics in court that he'd used in our relationship. Paint himself as the rational, caring one while portraying me as emotionally unstable and vindictive. We're going back to Portland, Jenny said firmly. Tonight. I can't just run away. I have classes, my job, my apartment lease. Becca, listen to me. Jenny's voice was fierce. This man spent months planning to have you committed to a psychiatric facility. He has keys to your apartment. He knows your schedule, your routes, your entire life. And now he's facing federal charges that could put him in prison for years. You think he's just going to respect a restraining order? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The truth always comes out. Rebecca. See you soon. Jenny saw me reading it. That's it. We're leaving. Now. As we drove toward my apartment to pack, I couldn't shake the feeling that Derek was already 10 steps ahead of us. He'd been planning this psychological campaign for months, maybe years across multiple victims. A restraining order and some criminal charges weren't going to stop someone who'd already proven he could manipulate the legal system. But as we turned onto Maple Street, I saw something that made me slam on the brakes. Derek's Honda Civic was parked directly across from my apartment building. He was waiting for me to come home. Jenny slammed the car into reverse before I could even process what I was seeing. Nope. Absolutely not. We're calling the police right now. But as we backed up, Derek's car pulled away from the curb. He wasn't trying to hide, he wanted me to see him. The message was clear, restraining order or not, he could be anywhere, anytime. He's baiting us, I said, watching his taillights disappear around the corner. He wants me to call the police so I look paranoid and vindictive. More evidence for his lawyers that I'm unstable. Jenny parked 3 blocks away and called Inspector Williams anyway. Derek Matthews is violating his restraining order. He was parked outside Rebecca's apartment building 15 minutes ago. I could hear Inspector Williams' response through the phone. Unless he approached Ms. Chen directly or came within 500 feet of her person, surveillance from a public street technically doesn't violate the order as written. Are you kidding me? Jenny's voice was rising. He's stalking her. Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but Derek's lawyer specifically negotiated the restraining order language to prohibit direct contact, not general proximity to public areas near her residence. After hanging up, we sat in silence for 10 minutes before my phone rang. Marcus, my landlord. Rebecca, thank God. Someone broke into your apartment about an hour ago. I called the police, but they said since there's no sign of forced entry and nothing appears to be stolen, it's probably someone with keys. My heart sank. What did they take? That's the weird part. As far as I can tell, nothing's missing. But someone went through your mail very carefully, opened everything, read it, left it all spread out on your kitchen table. And Rebecca, they left something for you. What kind of something? A manila folder with your name on it. I didn't open it, but it's thick. Maybe 40 or 50 pages. Derek hadn't broken in to steal anything. He'd broken in to leave evidence. More fabricated documentation, probably. More proof of my supposed mental instability to support his legal defense. Marcus, don't touch anything else. We're coming back with the police. When Officer Martinez met us at my apartment 30 minutes later, I barely recognized my own space. Every piece of mail had been opened and examined. My laptop had been moved. My journal, which I kept hidden in my bedroom closet, was sitting open on my bed, bookmarked to entries where I'd written about feeling confused and overwhelmed. The manila folder on my kitchen table was labeled Rebecca Chen, Complete Medical History. Inside were photocopies of therapy session notes that I'd never seen before, supposedly from Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the University Counseling Center. Detailed documentation of sessions I'd never attended, describing severe paranoid episodes, delusional thinking, and recommendations for psychiatric evaluation. I never saw Dr. Walsh, I told Officer Martinez. I had one appointment scheduled with Sarah from Dr. Martinez's office, but Derek called and rescheduled it, remember? Officer Martinez was photographing each page. These notes are dated going back 4 months. According to this, you've been having weekly therapy sessions since July, exhibiting escalating paranoid behavior and expressing violent fantasies about your ex-boyfriend. My hands were shaking as I flipped through page after page of fabricated therapy notes. Derek had created an entire alternate timeline where I was the dangerous, unstable one who'd been receiving mental health treatment for months. Treatment that recommended immediate psychiatric intervention. This is his defense strategy, I realized. He's not just going to claim he was trying to help me. He's going to claim I was already under psychiatric care, already diagnosed with paranoid delusions, and that I fabricated the stalking allegations as part of my mental illness. Jenny found something else on my bedroom dresser, a business card for Riverside Behavioral Health with a handwritten note. Dr. Kim is expecting your call. The intake process will be much easier if you admit yourself voluntarily. Someone who cares. Officer Martinez bagged the note as evidence, but we all knew the truth. Derek wasn't just violating his restraining order. He was escalating toward the endgame he'd always planned, having me committed using fabricated medical records as evidence. How long until trial? I asked. 6 to 8 weeks, minimum. I looked around my violated apartment, at the fake therapy notes spread across my table, at the business card from the psychiatric facility Derek had researched specifically for me. 6 weeks was too long. Derek wasn't going to wait for the legal system to play out. He was going to finish what he'd started, and now he had a folder full of medical evidence to support his case. Jenny, I said quietly, get me everything you can find about Lisa Park. If Derek had done this before, if he'd successfully had someone committed using fabricated evidence, then somewhere out there was a woman who knew exactly how his system worked. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to help me stop him. 3 days after Derek broke into my apartment, Jenny's research paid off. She found Lisa Park working as a barista in Asheville, North Carolina, living under her mother's maiden name. She agreed to talk, Jenny said, handing me her phone. But Rebecca, she's terrified. Derek destroyed her life so completely that she's been hiding for 3 years. Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper when I called her that evening. When Inspector Williams contacted me, I almost hung up. I thought Derek had found me again. Lisa, I need to understand how he got you committed. The prosecutor says Derek's using the same playbook against me. A long pause. He documented everything for 6 months. Fake therapy notes, staged recordings of me having episodes, even got my roommate to sign an affidavit claiming I was dangerous. But Rebecca, the thing that made it work wasn't the fake evidence. What do you mean? Derek got to my therapist. My real therapist, Dr. Amanda Foster. He somehow convinced her to meet with him about my concerning behavior. Told her he was worried I might hurt myself or others. She was bound by confidentiality, so she couldn't tell me about their meeting, but she started asking leading questions in our sessions. My stomach dropped. Leading questions about what? About paranoia, about whether I was having thoughts of violence, about my relationship with reality. Derek had primed her with specific concerns, so when she evaluated my mental state for the commitment hearing, her testimony supported his claims. I thought about my own scheduled appointment with Sarah at the counseling center, the one Derek had called to reschedule. What if that hadn't been about intercepting my therapy? What if it had been about positioning himself as a concerned ex-boyfriend reaching out to mental health professionals? Lisa, did Derek ever contact the counseling center pretending to be worried about you? 3 times. I found out later during the legal discovery process. He called claiming I'd made concerning statements about self-harm, that I'd been talking about getting revenge on people who'd hurt me. Each time, he provided just enough accurate personal details to sound credible. My hands were shaking. And the therapist believed him? She was required to take the reports seriously. So when I came in for sessions, she was already primed to see signs of instability. Every normal emotional response looked like a symptom to her. When Derek finally petitioned for my commitment, Dr. Foster's testimony was that I'd been exhibiting escalating concerning behaviors for months. I closed my eyes, seeing Derek's strategy with crystal clarity. He hadn't just been creating fake evidence, he'd been manipulating real mental health professionals into becoming unwitting accomplices in his psychological warfare. Rebecca, there's something else. Derek didn't work alone. He had help. What kind of help? His brother Mike works in hospital administration. Medical records, intake processes, insurance verification. Mike knew exactly how psychiatric commitments get processed and what documentation carries the most weight with evaluation teams. I felt like I was falling into an abyss. Derek's brother helped him fake your commitment? Mike never directly falsified anything. But he coached Derek on which forms to forge, which symptoms to highlight, which facilities had the loosest oversight for emergency evaluations. Derek knew exactly how to game the system because Mike had shown him every vulnerability. Jenny was frantically taking notes beside me. Is Mike still working in healthcare? As far as I know. Mercy General Hospital in Derek's hometown. Rebecca, if Derek's planning the same thing with you, Mike's probably already involved. Insurance pre-authorization, facility intake procedures, even which doctors are most likely to approve emergency commitments, Mike would know all of it. After hanging up with Lisa, I stared at Jenny's notes. Derek wasn't just a manipulative ex-boyfriend with boundary issues. He was part of a systematic operation that had successfully weaponized the mental health system against at least 2 women, possibly more. And now he had 6 weeks to perfect his strategy against me. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Amanda Chen called me at 6:43 a.m. on a Friday, her voice electric with excitement. Rebecca, I found Mike Matthews' personnel records. Derek's brother was fired from Mercy General 3 months ago for falsifying patient intake documents. The hospital is conducting an internal investigation, and they want to cooperate with law enforcement. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. What kind of falsification? Psychiatric evaluation forms, insurance authorizations, even patient consent signatures. The hospital's legal team thinks Mike was running a systematic scheme to fast-track involuntary commitments. They have documentation going back 2 years. Jenny grabbed the phone from me. Does this connect to Derek's cases? Better than that. Mike kept detailed records of every case he helped with, including patient names and facility placements. Lisa Park is in there. And Jenny, there are 7 other women. My hands were shaking as I called Inspector Williams. We need to talk. Now. 3 hours later, I was sitting in a federal building conference room looking at a whiteboard covered with photos, dates, and connecting lines that looked like a serial killer's investigation board. Because in a way, it was. Derek and Mike Matthews have been systematically targeting women for psychiatric commitment fraud for over 3 years, Inspector Williams explained. The pattern is always the same. Derek dates the victim, gathers personal information, then orchestrates a breakup designed to create maximum psychological distress. Officer Martinez pointed to the timeline. While the victim is trying to recover, Derek implements a 6-month campaign of mail fraud, surveillance, and evidence fabrication. Meanwhile, Mike identifies which psychiatric facilities have the weakest oversight and coaches Derek on exactly what documentation to forge. I stared at the photos of other women, successful graduate students, young professionals, all of whom looked competent and independent in their before pictures. What happened to them? 3 were successfully committed and lost their academic or professional careers. 2, like Lisa, went into hiding and completely rebuilt their lives under new identities. 1 moved out of the country. 1. Inspector Williams paused. Sarah Kim attempted suicide after her release from Riverside Behavioral Health. She survived, but Derek had destroyed her so completely that she believed his version of reality. The room was silent for a moment. Then Inspector Williams smiled grimly. But here's the good news, Rebecca. Mike kept records because he was billing Derek for his services. Detailed invoices showing payments for, consultation on medical documentation, and facility intake guidance. We have a paper trail proving conspiracy to commit fraud across state lines. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek, intake appointment scheduled for Monday 2 p.m. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I showed the message to Inspector Williams, who immediately made a phone call. This is it. He's moving to the final phase. Officer Martinez was already putting on her jacket. We have enough evidence for conspiracy charges against both brothers. But if we move now, we can catch Derek in the act of attempting to execute a fraudulent commitment. They wired me up with recording equipment and positioned surveillance teams around Riverside Behavioral Health. The plan was simple: let Derek walk into his own trap while federal agents documented every step of his elaborate fraud. At 1:55 p.m. on Monday, I sat in my car outside Riverside watching Derek walk confidently through the front doors, carrying a thick folder of fabricated evidence. He was wearing his most trustworthy outfit, button-down shirt, khakis, the cologne that used to make me feel safe. At 2:47 p.m., Derek emerged in handcuffs, flanked by federal agents. Mike Matthews was arrested simultaneously at his apartment, where agents found detailed case files on 12 different women, including intake strategies, facility recommendations, and invoices totaling $34,000 for what he called psychiatric consultation services. The final text I ever received from Derek came from federal detention: "You have no idea what you've unleashed. This goes deeper than you think." He was wrong about one thing, though. I knew exactly what I'd unleashed: justice for 9 women who'd been told they were crazy when they were actually being systematically destroyed by someone who claimed to love them. Derek Matthews was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. His brother Mike got 6 years. Riverside Behavioral Health was fined $2.3 million for inadequate oversight procedures. And me? I got my life back. Northwestern honored their research assistantship offer, the student loan mess got sorted out, and Marcus let me break my lease early so I could move to Illinois without Derek knowing my new address. The best part, though, was the phone call I received 6 months later from Lisa Park, using her real name again for the first time in 3 years. "Rebecca, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm testifying at the civil trial next month. For the first time since Derek, I finally feel like myself again." So did I.